Okay,
Okay.
do we have it now?
That's perfect.
Sorry about that. All right, in the lower right-hand corner, you will see a number. That's the slide number. If you have a question later, please reference that. If you have a question as I'm going along, if it's just a short question, what does that term mean? Please send it in by chat, and Mary Eliza will break in. If you have anything longer, please wait, save to the end. I'm going to do the version of this. If you want the full version, which runs over an hour, you can find it on the Livable California website, and also the PowerPoint, which has a lot of links to the sources for the data. Okay, here's one of the basic problems with transit. It is slow. In the middle here, we have the average length of time for home to work commute. Drive alone is 24 minutes. The average is a little bit more because the vast majority in the US and even in San Francisco is drive alone. But look at the transit modes. They are all quite a bit more, some of them over twice as much. And the other thing that happens is that with the exception of commuter rail, the speed of travel is lower. So we're talking about slower travel for a shorter trip. The last thing here, it is near impossible to access the majority of jobs in US metropolitan areas in any reasonable time. The typical metropolitan resident can reach about 30% of the jobs in a metropolitan area via transit in 90 minutes. And that's one way. 3 hours a day in commute, and you can only reach 30% of the jobs. Okay, this is the basic problem. You just can't get there from there. Not only is it slow, but it doesn't access very much. So via the automobile, and this includes sharing, you can get to more jobs in 20 minutes this way, driving, than you can from transit and walk. That's the orange here, in 60 minutes. If you want to take a full 60 minutes, this is all one way, you need 12 times as many jobs. That's just the way of life it is. Now, who pays? Road users more than pay, more than cover what governments spend on roads through the fees and taxes they pay for the use of roads. Now, remember, a lot of what you pay when you drive does not go for roads. It goes for other things, and then there are shifts back and forth. And I'll save that for another day. But trust me, I've done the research. It's cited in the full PowerPoint. Road users more than pay for the cost of what governments spend on roads through what they pay to use the roads. In California, I've done the calculation state by state, and California has one of the highest overages. Now, pre-COVID, transit users only paid about 1/4 of what the government spent on transit. Now, with transit use falling out, it's under 10%. Okay, here's something else that's very important. You will hear how important it is to use transit because we have to cut our emissions, we have to cut our greenhouse gas emissions, etc. Unfortunately, unless you are using a very heavily utilized transit means where they're really packed in, this isn't true. Overall, and this is national statistics, overall, the private automobile is far more fuel efficient, energy efficient, and that directly ties to emissions efficient than transit. And transit is going away. It is lengthening its lead every year as older cars are being replaced by newer cars with higher gasoline efficiency, and then of course going into more electric modes. Again, it's just the way it is. Don't believe it when somebody says that transit is more efficient. BART, Caltrain, New York City subway, yes, that is true. But the vast majority of means of transit are not very highly utilized. And you've got 2 or 3 people in a vehicle that's 40 feet long. It's not very energy efficient. Since COVID has hit, transit has really taken a hit. The driving has recovered to very close to pre-COVID levels, but transit ridership is down as much. Well, BART was down to well under a quarter. It's barely up to getting to 30 and 40%. Caltrain has not recovered even that much. And so what's happening is the ones that were most efficient and most productive and were having the users pay the largest percentage, those are the ones that were hit the most because they were being used by long haul riders, choice riders, and now they aren't using it. Why? There's a lot of reasons, but one of the big ones, besides COVID, I'm going to catch something, is we have changed BART, for example, into a social services agency. They're spending millions and millions of dollars a year to try to work with the people who have no home, who are living or at least camping out where they can get warm or cold, depending on the weather, because they've got nowhere else to go. And they're on the stations and they're on the buses. Many of them have a lot of problems. They have real problems in just trying to live their lives. Many of them also have substance abuse problems. And you have to figure a way to help them out. And unfortunately, a lot of the riders who don't have those problems don't want to go on BART. Okay. Driving, as I said, is pretty much recovered. But here's what's been happening for going back to 1980. This line here is the total of unlinked passenger trips. An unlinked passenger trip is one person getting on one vehicle. If you take a bus to go to BART to go to your job, that's 2 unlinked and 1 linked trip. These are unlinked trips. That's been very flat for years. It's actually down a little bit from 1980 to 2019. The population has gone up 50%. So the unlinked passenger trips per capita, the yellow columns, have gone down from 104 to 65. Not good, not good. And then since we got into COVID, we have seen it drop even further. But the costs have continued to increase. So the subsidies, total subsidies, increased 59% over this period from 2013 to 2021 in current dollar years and 27% in constant dollar years. Not a very good situation. In San Francisco, the central business district has become a ghost town. What we see, the statistic here, where it's about 35%, 40%, is that the number of people actually in downtown San Francisco, Monday through Friday, is a small fraction of what it was before. And this sheet, this slide, is from BART. This was presented to a BART board meeting. BART believes there's a very high correlation between the number of people in downtown and BART ridership. Not from me, from BART. This is another one from BART. This was again presented to the BART board. As you can see, for many years, BART ridership was going up. It actually peaked about 2016. Then COVID hit. It had been going down for a while, but then it really dropped. And then it's bounced back a little bit, but it's got a long way to go to reach the peak. And if you look at their 3 projections, the upside, base case, and the downside, even in the upside, it doesn't get back to the peak by the end of this forecast period in 2032. The industry response has been, we're in trouble, throw money at us with both hands. But in the meantime, what we want to do is all of these huge, huge projects, and many of them are billions, and some of them are even tens of billions of dollars. We need to get those approved and funded and underway. Why? Well, frankly, we need to get this going before people figure out what's going on. This is the problem. Even though there may not be a need because we've had such a huge change in how people work and how people get to work, we don't want to consider that. We want to get all of these projects fully approved and funded as fast as we can. Now, the other problem is, where's the money for this going to come from? Over the period since COVID started, there were 3 separate bills passed by the federal government that together gave almost $80 billion to the transit industry. With the Republicans taking control of the House of Representatives, this happening again this year or next is exceedingly unlikely. There is considerable question if even the annual ongoing every year money that goes to transit is going to be as high as it has. So if it's not the Fed, well, that leaves the state. And the state, unfortunately, didn't really save up its tens of billions of dollars in federal funding for a rainy day. It spent it. So we're looking at, depending who you ask, a state budget deficit of more than 20 billion. And the governor has said, well, we've got to take some of that out of transit. So about 2 billion cut in what was transit. Well, fortunately, we do have some heroes racing to the rescue. What can I say? What do we want to do? Hope that Senator Weiner, who has done such a tremendous job on housing, is equally successful for transit. By the way, in case anybody missed it, that's supposed to be sarcasm.
Thank God.
Okay. Okay. Here's what has worked as far as more money. MTC and ABAG have been very successful in getting the Bay Area electorate to pass bridge tolls increase. RM1, 2, and 3 together have been $5 in toll increase, 4 of which have gone through, and the last will go through in 2025. Now, several of us tried to fight this. We had a lawsuit saying this was a tax, not a user charge, because the vast majority of RM2 and 3 are going for transit, not on bridge or even road improvements. But this California Supreme Court refused to review a decision about a year and a half ago from First Appellate that only 50% plus 1 was all that was needed. And that meant all 9 county-wide. Yeah, RM3, there are 2 counties that did not vote in favor of it. But that's where it is. I've reviewed that opinion. As much as I would like to say something, it's wrong and it should have been thrown out. There's a special provision there that says that Prop 13 does not apply to state-owned property. And the state owns every toll road in the Bay except Golden Gate, and RM3 did not apply to the Golden Gate Bridge. So I think we can expect to see another toll very shortly, and we'll see how it goes. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that in 2019, and we still have about the same level of use of toll roads today in 23, $127 million is what you would get from a $1 toll increase. But for 28, there's a $238.5 million shortfall projected for Muni alone. Okay, now I've covered a lot of stuff. I'm going to skip over. The one thing that we know about San Francisco is that economic downfall has not been good. Here, again, this is from a Bay Area. This is from basically from a Bay Area economic research organization that says that our economic recovery indices in San Francisco are not very good at all. San Jose does a little better, but even San Jose is less than the median. And on economic activity, which is really defined as economic investments in new assets, including new buildings, San Francisco is dead last. San Jose is better, but still not really good. And we are still way, way up there. Our housing is the most expensive by far. So what we're seeing is businesses don't want to come here. The ones that do want to move. They want to move their production facilities, their research, their offices, or at least the CEO wants to move to a place where the taxes are low. This is not looking good. Okay, we had a lot of road topics I covered. I'm going to not get in any detail here. If anybody wants to talk about any of these things, I will go through very, very slowly so you can get an idea. But we have all of these things that are coming in, the 15-minute city, the induced transportation. If you build it, they will come. So don't build it and they won't come, which doesn't work. Then we get into how ineffective the Bay Area has been addressing traffic congestion. The travel time index is the ratio of how long it takes to get somewhere at peak during the middle of the day. And as you can see, up until 2017, which is the last year I have here, which is before COVID hit, San Francisco, Oakland was not doing well. Silicon Valley was catching up. Not good, not good. Actually, you can build your way out of congestion. It was been done once. We have complete streets, which says, let's reverse the entire history of transportation and traffic engineering in the US, where the emphasis has been on higher volume roads at higher speeds. And instead, let's go to complete streets. Well, guess what? This can be effective to some extent, but we are not doing that, even the places that say that they are. Complete streets has been a main objective of others. So we just have not done well with this. Okay. Parking. San Francisco doesn't believe in cars, so it obviously doesn't believe in parking. But I'm going to end on one thing that's very important, and that is you must understand that the people at a poverty level, transit doesn't work for them for a variety of reasons. And this emphasis on the importance of poverty level people to be able to drive to their job is more important relative to non-poverty level people. It's more important in San Francisco and San Jose than almost any other place in the country. Again, if you are a person with a low income job, if you don't have an ability to get there by transit, and you usually don't, for all of these reasons listed here, you have to be able to drive. If you can't drive, you can't get to your job. That's how simple it is. Okay, gone through a lot of things quickly. Be happy to take any questions that people have. So raise your hand and or send a link and let's get to it. Eliza, you're up.
Yeah, I had a question about the private automobiles giving off less emissions than bus and streetcar. And I had a question about, I don't doubt that whatsoever, but I've been wanting to get that information out there to the public. And do you have a source on that? So people say, well, what's your source? You know, I can point them to something.
Yes, I had to do the calculations myself. I used data from two places. The American Public Transit Association puts out a very detailed spreadsheet every year. I started with that. And the energy data I got from Department of Energy, Oak Ridge National Laboratory that puts out their energy book every year. And again, the key factor here is that transit vehicles have been losing load for a very, very long time, and particularly during COVID. You have no advantage at all when you have vehicles that just don't have the loads. And that's where we are now. Okay, Patricia.
Did you say we could get a copy of this slideshow?
Yes, go to the Livable California website, and it's there. And if not, get to me individually, and I'll be happy to give it to you. There is my email. There is my phone number. Email me, and I'll be happy to send you the materials.
The link is in the chat, and I'm going to post it right now because if you came in late, you won't be able to get to it. I've got to figure out which keyboard I'm using here. Let's see. I think I can post it in the chat. That's the link to where it is on the Livable California site. We're talking about the presentation. And I guess that may be a recording of the meeting, which would be a copy of the presentation.
There is the recording. There is also a link to the document.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Document.
Okay, yeah, I've already got it. I just saved it.
Okay, now what was posted was basically a PDF, which doesn't have the notes, and the notes is where I have the links. So Rick, have you been able to put up a PowerPoint document yet? If not,
no.
Okay, contact me directly, and I will send you the links myself, or call me, and we'll take care of it. Okay, and my contact information is right there. Okay. Patricia, you had another question?
No, no, I didn't.
Okay, anybody else have any comments?
Yes,
jokes?
I did. I meant to introduce you, Tom, so they know who they're talking to or who is talking.
Hi, I'm Tom.
No, Tom is one of our most, one of our genius people when it comes to transportation. He's been a consultant for all of these cities for years on public transportation systems. So we have him come on and tell us everything that we need to know. And if he doesn't know the answer, he can probably find it. So that's why we have him come on. And this was a shortened version, of course, of this. And I've got to mention this. I mentioned this earlier to Tom and other people. There's a situation going on right now with BART. If any of you aren't familiar with it, the BART board is in kind of a problem area right now. They're broke. And there's an awful lot of strange things going on with the BART board and with BART in general. The inspector general just quit. And we have Senator Glazer, who was invited by Scott Wiener to come on to a committee, a special committee, to help him figure out how to get more money for BART, which is essentially how do we convince the voters to vote to tax themselves at a higher rate or something like that. And Senator Glazer, I think, just went on for a short while so he could resign. So we have two big resignations were announced in the last week. Senator Glazer has a bill which he tried to pass last year, which he's running up the flagpole again. It's SB 827. And his bill is basically to do something which we could also do in local settings as well as at the state level. But he wants to have some teeth in the, what I'm going to call teeth, in the position that the Inspector General has. The Inspector General supposedly has the right to get to any paperwork or any kind of documents they need in order to really oversee the BART board. But the way the BART board was treating the Inspector General, she was not being allowed to get access to the documents, essentially. So if you read the bill that Glazer has put together, he wants to make this a much more difficult problem for the BART board to avoid handing the documents by turning it into a possible crime and attaching fines to any BART board, any member or anybody who's working for BART who doesn't come forward with the documents. And that's, something that, who knows? I'm supporting it. Does anybody else have any questions about that? Or I'll put together a report and give people information.
Okay, this goes back to RM3, which was the third, fourth, and fifth dollar to be added to the tolls. And at that time, he threw in there that, okay, a lot of this money is going to go for BART, and BART is totally unmanageable. So there has to be an IG. And that passed. And so BART had to accept the IG. But what happened was that BART proceeded to do everything it could to prevent the IG from doing her job. And the person they got may be the best qualified person in the nation. Her background is unbelievable. But she was given a budget that was probably less than 10% of what was required. Her staff is 3 people. It should be probably 30 or more. And the BART board, 6 of the 9 elected BART members are very dependent upon the unions to get elected. And the unions are insisting that the BART board have its own code of conduct that the BART IG must comply with. And she's just said, no, I can't do my job. But the BART board has insisted now, a bill very similar to SB 827 that is being introduced this year by Senator Glazer was passed last year. And then 6 of the, I believe it was 6 of the 9 went to the governor and said, we can't live with that. So the governor vetoed it.
Right.
And in California, I believe the last time a gubernatorial veto was overridden was probably more than 30 years ago. And so that it died. So we're trying again. And this time, if there is going to be any money going on, we're going to see a lot of action to try to get a real IG protection bill. And it's crazy to say, but that's the way it works. There was a report from the Alameda County Civil Grand Jury in June of last year that really got into what a terrible thing that the BART board was allowed to ignore and do everything it can to defang the IG. So we'll see. The IG, the one who's resigned, she had put out some very good reports that you can see on their website. So we'll see what will happen. Okay. Have fun. Anybody have any other questions for me?
Do you have any do you have any favorite state bills other than that one that you would like to mention, Tom, that you feel are particularly something we should know about?
Well, this is what Rick does for a living.
Okay, Rick, would you
Well,
like
not that
to-
he's paid very well, but he's the one who is spending a tremendous amount of time, and for the livable Californian has some excellent resources there. So I'll be happy to jump in, but Rick has far more knowledge of this than I do. Take it away, Rick. You're still on mute.
Okay. Give me a second and I'll share screen and sort of answer Mary's question. These are a list of current state bills that relate to the discussion we just had on transportation. AB 7, transportation funding capacity projects. This is one of the ones I really hate. It would state the intent of the legislature to enact legislation that would eliminate single occupancy vehicle freeway capacity projects and only allow capacity projects for bus, rapid transit, rail, and active transportation purposes, and projects that significantly add safety. So that's one I hate. Here's another one I hate even more. Well, not more. Can't hate it more. AB 825, vehicles, bicycles on sidewalks. Basically, it would take away local authority from prohibiting bicycles on sidewalks. And then, of course, you know, it would require that a person riding a bicycle on a sidewalk yield to the right of way to the pedestrians and adhere to a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit, and creates a crime for that. Of course, you know, there's not going to be anybody there to observe and get evidence to pursue that crime. And, you know, bicycles going 10 miles an hour, average walking speed for a healthy person at a moderate rate is 4 miles per hour. So we're going to have 10-mile-an-hour bicycles weaving in and out of people. Not a good idea. Of course, they always hate parking. So now they're going to have, there's AB 894 is shared parking that would basically require public agency to allow shared parking to be counted toward automobile parking requirements for new or existing developments, and basically require state agencies, state parking lots to that are private to share their parking, and then you know, eliminate that from new construction. AB 981, pilot highway maintenance and rehabilitation demonstration. Well, they want to create like 12 projects every year as a pilot. Sounds like a lot more than a pilot. And those projects would I mean, the good part is recycling of use, but they also essentially take where they put in these pilot projects to demonstrate rehabilitation. They take them out of essentially out of service. So, you know, you're going to see chunks of highway that you can't use because it's in the middle of a demonstration project. 1317, unbundled parking, residential real property. Essentially, you'd have to, if you're a small apartment owner, 5 units or greater, that provides parking with your rent in your rents, in your the tenants in your building, you have to unbundle that. And that means you have to amend or change your lease with people to separate parking, which would be separately leased, from the rental of the residential unit. If they do exempt individual garages that are part of your unit, but basically, then there's a lot of bureaucracy that requires the owner of the residential property to annually provide a tenant with an itemized market rate cost of parking, and they have to, every year the owner has to go out and survey parking in public garages that are close and apply that to as the value that is the market rate cost of parking. So
Jesus.
big bureaucracy, but of course everybody knows parking's a terrible thing.
Does anyone know who's pushing these bills? Because it seems like obviously the masses will be really outraged over this, like the vast majority of people. So is there a particular person? Is it Scott Wiener, or like who's coming up with this stuff that the vast majority of people are going to be totally upset over?
I think it's kind of spread across several. I should have put on this slide who's sponsoring what, but it's not just one. Friedman's terrible. Wicks is terrible. Of course, Wiener's terrible.
We can do that. We can put that together and send it to you.
1370 is Wendy Carrillo.
I think this would be great information to get out on like a TV commercial or something to like show, you know, everyone in SF and maybe LA, Los Angeles as well. The big voter bases are those two cities, as to like what these people are doing, because this information really needs to really hit the public. This is really crazy.
Well, if we don't need any cars, we also don't need any gas. So they're going to conduct a study on how to phase out the existence of gasoline fueling stations by a specified date, and incentives to change over to electric charging stations. Now, I think gasoline service stations should, you know, over time, you know, add electric vehicle charging, but I guess phasing out the gasoline is one way to phase out the cars. And then this last one listed here, we've already discussed in detail, and that's the BART Inspector General that everybody should get behind. That's it.
Does anybody have any questions for Rick?
From the research I've done, it sounds like although electric vehicles are good for people that live in cities because they don't have to go super long distances, but I don't think it's realistic to phase out all gas-powered cars because of the extreme environmental damage that mining for lithium does. Obviously, mining for oil does environmental damage as well, but lithium mining is very extreme environmental damage. So I just realistically, I'm not sure how phasing out all gas-powered cars, you know, that's going to cause a huge amount of problems down the road.
Also, batteries don't do very well in the cold. As people are finding out, batteries need a lot of a certain kind of temperature rate and all that. So the most logical way to go with a lot of this stuff is just go hybrid, either or. So if one doesn't work, the other will. And also, one of the things that about electric, at least cars, the battery can be used as a backup for people when they lose their power. And if you had a solar system with a roof attached, you would actually have a pretty robust system if you actually lost your grid power and that sort of thing. And you had, particularly if you had a hybrid car, so you'd have an awful lot of options then, making you rather independent and being able to take care of yourself. But that seems to be something the government doesn't really care about anymore, us being independent and able to take care of ourselves. So does anybody have any other questions? I'll be putting together some written reports and.
Tom, is your hand up?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Okay, now what we have, of course, is electric cars and electric buses are wonderful because there's no tailpipe emissions. Hell, they don't even have a tailpipe. Well, okay, where do they get the power? Where do they get the electricity? Now, it varies, but back east, most many states, most of the power is coming from coal. And what isn't coming from coal to a large extent is coming from natural gas. So we want to get rid of natural gas because, gee, that does have carbon emissions. Well, carbon emissions are one thing, but natural gas, as a general rule, has about half of the carbon emissions of coal, because natural gas is mainly methane, which is CH4, one atom of carbon and 4 atoms of hydrogen. And so it creates a lot less CO2 because it burns more carbon and about half of the carbon emissions of coal. But you say, okay, well, out here in California, we've almost gotten rid of all of the coal whatsoever in the state, which is true. But there's a lot of coal outside the state. In California, of all the western states, is one of only two, the other being Idaho, that is a net importer of electricity. And so California is still getting a lot of coal power. And it's going down, as it is all over the US, but there's still a lot. And if we try to totally do away with coal and with natural gas, it's kind of dumb. And we're now going to the point where we have some cities, including Berkeley, was the first, that says we're going to do away with natural gas. You have a new house, new apartment, you can't have natural gas. Okay. Here's how it works. If you have natural gas and you have a water heater, then you burn natural gas to get water up to about 125 degrees. If you don't do that, if you go backwards, you have to have a transmission over a very long distance of electricity at a very high voltage. And then you have to bring it down, which means you lose electricity. And over that long distance, you have what's called line loss. So you lose 5 or 6% or 8% even in some cases of the electricity line loss for that long distance. Then you go back to the place where you have to have the electricity generated, which means you go from motion to electricity. Every time energy changes its way it's done, its mode, from motion to electrical or from electrical to heat, you lose a lot of the energy. So you transmit at a very long distance, and then the motion from a steam generator. So you have a steam generator, and so you had to go chemical to create the steam, and you have very high temperature steam. On my aircraft carrier, it would be 1200 degrees rather than 125 degrees. And then how do they generate the steam? Well, the best way now is to burn natural gas.
Oh.
That's how bad it gets. So we're replacing the internal combustion. I'm sorry, the fossil fuel, we're replacing that in a lot, etc. But even today, still, if you are having electric water heat, it is not very green. So it's what we call green, but not bright green. And it's getting worse. So frankly, electric is not real good. Heat pumps are good, and solar is very good with some electric augmentation. So we're dumber than dirt in what we're doing. And we're actually making things worse. And until we get to the point where we're totally green in how we generate our electricity, that's going to take decades. We just are not doing a bright thing by getting rid of gas water heaters. Thank you. I feel much better now.
I will
Feel free
say
to call
one
me for
thing.
more detail.
I will say one thing, because we have solar in our building. We've had thermal for a really long time. The most practical, cleanest way to go is thermal.
Yes,
water
agreed.
heaters. And that takes about, that for us, it cut our use by about 60% when we first had it done. And now they're more efficient than they were. So we've had new ones now. I don't even know exactly what the cost savings or the use of, we had gas, hooked up to the water heater. And we also have steam or hot water heating in our building. So we've got a lot of hot water use in our building, but there's a lot of new stuff coming along. One of them is they supposedly think we're going to be able to get a lot of lithium out of the Salton Sea, perhaps, but that's a whole other story. So does anybody have anything else they want to ask or have anything else they want to say? Or I'm going to leave the chat up for a while if somebody wants to.
I was gonna say something, which is that I think it's gonna be important for, one thing that I've been trying to work on. Obviously, I can't work on it alone. It needs to be a really big community effort at some point, and I'm trying to build it up. But I think that, like, San Francisco is gonna need to, I don't know, kind of have like a educational campaign going where we get this kind of information out to a lot of people in the city, so that we can kind of reverse a lot of these things that are going on. And so that's something that I want to work on because, yeah, a lot of people, I've been going from door to door, from business to business and door to door with petitions and things like that recently, to asking people, do you like this slow street on your street? Do you like this parking removal over here, in front of your business? And do you like these bulb outs over here? And the vast majority of the masses in San Francisco, like just person after person, says they hate all of this stuff. So they just, yeah, like it's so surprising because you would think it's not like that, given how many changes have been made to our streets, and the loud voices of the bicycle coalition and stuff like that. But every time I go door to door with a petition, it's just like 98% of people hate the bulb outs, the bicycle rental stations, the getting rid of lanes and all this stuff. So at least we're still able to do ballot measures in San Francisco. And once the power of us putting something on the ballot as citizens goes away, we are 100% screwed at that point. So, I think over the next year or 2 years or 3 years, however long it takes money to send out mailings and stuff like that. So unfortunately, it does take money, and a lot of money, but at some point, I think we need to wake the public up to what's going on and get rid of this SFMTA board, because they, by far, from what I have seen, do not represent the masses of people. People hate this stuff. The parking gone, putting in bike lanes instead of parking. People hate this stuff so much. So,
Well, like I've mentioned before, I think we need to get rid of the line item veto as far as the budget items go. There's some other things we could talk about later. But if everybody's kind of tired and wants to end this meeting, did you have something, Tomasita? I see your hands up. I didn't see your hand at first, but I see it now.
It wasn't up. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Okay, there's something that really bothers me, and it's, you know, the $4 million a year that the city gives to the Bicycle Coalition for lobbyists, you know, and I'm just wondering, is there any way we can stop that? Because, you know, as long as they have $4 million a year, which is, by the way, in the publicity to defeat the reopening of JFK Drive and the Upper Grade Highway, they used that, it would cost $20 million, and it comes out to $4 million a year, which happens to be the exact amount that the taxpayers give to the Bicycle Coalition. Is there some way we could defeat that, you know, to get rid of them getting that all this money for lobbying? And the Senior Disability Action never took a strong stand because they don't want to lose their city funding, you know. So you know, all these nonprofits, they're not really doing their job of what they said they would do, like to defend the elderly and the disabled, because they're just worried about losing their city funding. So it's just a very corrupt circle. But number one for me is to get rid of that giving money to lobbyists. And if you notice, that guy that started this new thing called Kids Safe, I bet you next year they're going to give him money, and so he doesn't have to be a techie anymore. Now he can be the executive director of a foundation called a nonprofit called Kids Safe, and then he'll be on the public dole as well. So I don't know if you have any ideas about that. And the other thing is, I like the idea of candidates, because, you know, in the Sunset, that young lady Louie would have won if there wasn't the scandal about her residency. You know, she was a grassroots person that was popular, and many of us can't stand Joel Engardio, and, you know, our supervisor had himself very unpopular, and so she would have won, except that she had the scandal. But, you know, if there were some grassroots candidates, because what's happening is that the techies are organizing, you know, they have their yes on YEM, you know, statewide and local, funded by, you know, the opposition to the JFK Drive reopening. You know, he gave, the owner of Yelp gave $300,000 to their side. So they're organizing, and, you know, in cahoots with the mayor and her staff and the bicyclists. Those people are all the techies, those people. But there needs to be, like, people who are grassroots, like the people in this meeting, people who are grassroots San Franciscans, but are willing to run for office. But then again, we have the money. The big money is going to for sure back, you know, whoever London Breed wants to succeed her for the mayor, you know, after Gavin Newsom appoints her senator, in case Feinstein decides to bow out early. You know that he's going to appoint Breed to be the next senator from California. So, you know, we need to have candidates, grassroots candidates. So, and then we need to raise the money to support them, or, you know, but we did win 3 people to the city college board. So that was a huge accomplishment, to get people who, you know, have a progressive agenda, although it may be that people on this call don't have a progressive agenda, but.
No, I'm gonna ask Patricia to speak, and then we're probably gonna end this. And what I propose we do is come up with another meeting where we do some strategy, and we'll figure that out later, but it's getting kind of late. So go ahead, Patricia.
Okay, I'll keep this brief. When Joel Engardio took office, one of the things he made a big point about was going after nonprofits that were unjustly getting large sums of money. I plan on speaking to him soon about taking on the Bike Coalition, which, as Tomasita said, has over the years got millions of dollars and continue to get millions of dollars. It's no longer a nonprofit education organization. It is a lobby organization. Every single person on this meeting and every taxpayer in San Francisco has to pay their executives their six-figure salaries and all the propaganda that they spew out that is against our interests, and we have to support them. So I would suggest that everyone send a letter to Joel asking him to investigate this lobbying organization that is getting taxpayer money from everyone, and they are working against the majority interest. They're working for less than 10%, probably more like 5% of the residents who ride bikes. It is unethical.
It's around 3 or 5%. It's really a low percent. I mean, I actually, when I drive across town, I count the bicycles and I count the buses. And there are days when I see 3 bicycles driving across town. I mean, I just count the ones that cross my path. Buses, sometimes I see 3. So it's like really pretty ridiculous for them to be giving us these figures that we know are not correct. I mean, you know, it just so happens I'm on 17th and there are some bicyclists on the bicycle path. That's where I see them. I don't see them between here and Lake Street, for instance. But if everybody's kind of done, we will thank everybody who hung out to the bitter end, and we will, I'll give you a few minutes to grab